The Galactic Council had been running the universe for approximately 12,000 years, which was exactly 11,999 years longer than they probably should have been. Their latest discovery sat on the holographic display like a particularly unimpressive blue marble, rotating slowly while 36 alien dignitaries stared at it with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for tax audits. "Gentle beings," announced Council Prime Zephyr, his crystalline form catching the light in a way that suggested he practiced this pose in mirrors. "We have discovered another primitive species requiring our guidance." Ambassador Vex'talon shifted his purple tentacles in what passed for excitement among his kind. He'd been doing this job for 6 centuries, and honestly it had become routine. Find primitive species, intimidate them into submission, add them to the galactic registry, move on to the next planet. The formula was foolproof because, well, every species was basically the same when you got down to it. They all wanted the same things: technology, protection, and the privilege of not being vaporized by superior firepower. "The species calls itself human," Zephyr continued, manipulating the hologram to zoom in on various land masses. "Standard carbon-based life forms, recently achieved nuclear capability, completely unaware of galactic civilization. Textbook primitive." Counselor Thesis Ka, whose species resembled a cross between a praying mantis and a filing cabinet, clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "What's their primary governmental structure?" "Oh, this is the amusing part," Zephyr said, his crystalline features shifting into what might have been a smile if crystals could smile. "They have approximately 195 separate governmental entities, all operating independently. Most of them seem to spend their time arguing with each other about invisible lines they've drawn on their planet's surface." The council chamber erupted in the alien equivalent of laughter, which sounded like a combination of whale songs and printer malfunctions. Vex'talon felt his confidence surge. This was going to be even easier than the Regellians, who at least had the sense to unite their planet before someone showed up with death rays. "I assume we're following standard first contact protocol?" Vex'talon asked, already knowing the answer. He'd performed this dance so many times he could do it in his sleep. Show up, demonstrate superior technology, deliver the ultimatum, wait for the inevitable surrender, file the paperwork. "Naturally," Zephyr replied. "Though I hardly think we'll need our full diplomatic arsenal for this one. According to our scans, their most advanced weapons are essentially controlled explosions. They're still burning fossil fuels for energy. Half their population believes their planet is flat." "Flat?" Counselor Brix Nem's gaseous form rippled with disbelief. "How do they explain gravity?" "They don't," Zephyr said. "They just argue about it on something called social media instead of conducting actual scientific research." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Vex'talon began mentally composing his mission report. This would probably be wrapped up by lunch, Galactic Standard Time. "Ambassador Vex'talon," Zephyr announced formally, "you are hereby assigned to bring the human species into galactic civilization. Standard terms apply: complete submission to galactic authority, technological integration under our guidance, and the usual tribute arrangements." Vex'talon's tentacles curled in what his species considered a salute. "It will be my honor, Council Prime. Shall I prepare the full intimidation package?" "Probably overkill." Zephyr waved a crystalline appendage dismissively. "But better safe than sorry. We'll have this humanity kneeling before the week is out." The council members began filing out, already moving on to more important matters like trade disputes and territorial negotiations. None of them gave the small blue planet another thought. Why would they? In 12,000 years, not a single species had ever refused to kneel. They were about to learn that there's a first time for everything. Vex'talon's ship materialized in Earth's atmosphere with all the subtle grace of a flying cathedral. The vessel was specifically designed to inspire awe and terror in primitive species, all gleaming surfaces, impossible angles and weapons that could crack a planet like an egg. He'd positioned it directly over what his scans identified as Washington, D.C., the apparent center of one of the more prominent governmental entities. Within minutes, primitive aircraft were buzzing around his ship like confused insects. Vex'talon watched them through his view screen with the kind of fond condescension usually reserved for watching toddlers play with blocks. Their weapons couldn't even scratch a ship's paint job. His communication array crackled to life. Unidentified aircraft, this is Air Force One. You are in violation of restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately. Vex'talon activated his universal translator and opened a channel. Primitive beings, I am Ambassador Vex'talon of the Galactic Council. I demand an immediate audience with your planetary leadership. There was a pause. Then, stand by. 20 minutes later, Vex'talon found himself sitting across from a human male in what appeared to be a government building. The human had introduced himself as Jake Morrison, Deputy Assistant to the Undersecretary of Interdepartmental Relations, which sounded impressive until Vex'talon realized the human was basically a mid-level bureaucrat. Jake was currently filling out paperwork. So, Jake said without looking up from his forms, you're from space. I am the official representative of the Galactic Council, the supreme authority governing this galaxy, Vex'talon replied, his tentacles arranged in his most intimidating posture. I have come to offer your species the opportunity to join galactic civilization. That's nice, Jake said, still writing. Do you have any identification? Vex'talon's translator hiccuped. What? AD, passport, driver's license, something official. We can't just let anyone claim to represent Galactic whatever it was. I arrived in a starship the size of your largest buildings, Vex'talon pointed out, his voice rising slightly. I am clearly not from your planet. Yeah, about that, Jake looked up for the first time. You're going to need to move that thing. It's blocking air traffic, and the Federal Aviation Administration is having a fit. Vex'talon stared at the human. In 6 centuries of first contact missions, no one had ever asked him to move his ship because it was inconveniencing local transportation. I am offering your species membership in a galactic civilization spanning millions of worlds. That's great, Jake said, returning to his paperwork. But I still need you to fill out these forms. Visitor registration, declaration of intent, and this one here is for any biological contaminants you might be carrying. Biological contaminants? Space plague, alien viruses, that sort of thing. We had a whole thing with COVID a few years back, so we're pretty careful about that stuff now. Vex'talon's tentacles began to twitch involuntarily. This was not going according to protocol. The human should have been prostrating himself by now, begging for the wisdom of galactic civilization. Instead, he was treating the most significant moment in his species' history like a routine government transaction. Perhaps, Vex'talon said carefully, you don't understand the significance of this moment. I am the first contact between your species and galactic civilization. First contact, got it? Jake nodded, making a note. You'll need to report to the CDC for a full medical screening. Can't have you spreading space herpes or whatever. I don't have space herpes. That's what they all say, Jake replied with the weary tone of someone who'd clearly dealt with this sort of thing before. Look, mister. Sorry, how do you pronounce your name again? Vex'talon. And it's Ambassador Vex'talon. Right, Ambassador Vex'talon. I'm sure this is all very exciting for you, but I've got 17 other interdepartmental crisis situations on my desk today. There's a trade dispute with Canada over maple syrup. The Pentagon lost another nuclear submarine. And don't even get me started on the situation with Florida. What situation with Florida? Nobody knows. That's the problem. Vex'talon felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: confusion. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. Where was the wonder? The fear? The immediate recognition of superior galactic authority? Human Jake Morrison, he said formally, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. I am here to offer your species a place in galactic civilization. Jake finally looked up from his paperwork and gave Vex'talon the kind of look usually reserved for people who try to sell timeshares at airports. And I'm here to make sure you follow proper procedures. So, are you going to fill out these forms, or do I need to call security? Vex'talon decided it was time to abandon subtlety. He rose to his full height, which was considerable, and arranged his tentacles in the traditional pose of galactic authority. His skin shifted to a deeper purple, and his eyes began to glow with the kind of otherworldly light that usually sent primitive species running for their caves. "Human Jake Morrison," he intoned in his most commanding voice, "you will cease this bureaucratic nonsense immediately. I am here to deliver an ultimatum to your species. You will kneel before the Galactic Council and accept our authority, or face the consequences." Jake looked up from his forms, blinked twice, and said, "Would you like some coffee? You look stressed." Vex'talon's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. "I what?" "Mutt. Coffee. It's a caffeinated beverage, good for stress relief." "Well, actually, caffeine increases stress, but somehow it makes you feel better about being stressed. It's complicated. I don't want your primitive stimulants." Vex'talon's tentacles writhed in frustration. "I want your species to kneel." "Yeah, that's not going to happen," Jake said, getting up and walking to a coffee machine in the corner. "We're really not the kneeling type. More of a firmly worded letter people, if you know what I mean." "You don't understand," Vex'talon said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "I command a fleet of starships capable of reducing your entire planet to cosmic dust. I have weapons that could turn your sun into a black hole. I represent a civilization that has conquered thousands of worlds." Jake poured 2 cups of coffee and offered one to Vex'talon. "That's nice. Have you tried turning it off and on again?" "Turning what off and on again?" "Your ship. Sometimes electronics get glitchy when they're in a new environment. Different electromagnetic fields, you know. My computer does this thing where it freezes up whenever I try to open spreadsheets, but if I restart it, everything works fine." Vex'talon stared at the human. "You think my technologically advanced starship is experiencing software difficulties?" "I'm just saying, it's worth a shot. Technology is technology, right?" Jake sat back down and returned to his paperwork. "So, about that ultimatum. What exactly are you threatening us with?" "Complete annihilation," Vex'talon said, though his heart wasn't really in it anymore. "Annihilation, got it." Jake made another note. "You know, we've gotten pretty good at that ourselves. Nuclear weapons, chemical warfare, biological agents. We've actually managed to nearly wipe ourselves out several times just by accident. Last year, we almost started World War III because someone posted a meme about pineapple on pizza. You've nearly destroyed yourselves multiple times?" "Oh yeah, it's kind of our thing. We're very creative when it comes to finding new ways to kill each other. Did you know we once had a war that started because someone threw a defenestration in Prague? That's when you throw someone out a window. By the way, we have a specific word for it because it happens so often." Vex'talon's tentacles had stopped writhing, and were now hanging limp at his sides. "You have a word for throwing people out of windows?" "Defenestration. Great word, right? We also have words for the fear of long words the day after tomorrow, and the act of killing someone by dropping them from a great height. That one's called precipitation." "I don't think that's correct." "You're right, that's weather. The killing thing is called defenestration too, but from really high up. We're very efficient with our vocabulary." Vex'talon sat down heavily in his chair. This was not going according to any protocol he'd ever studied. "Human Jake Morrison, do you understand that I am threatening your entire species with extinction?" "Yeah, I heard you the first time," Jake said, not looking up from his forms. "Thing is, we get extinction-level threats pretty regularly. Climate change, asteroid impacts, nuclear war, reality television. At this point, we're kind of used to it." "Reality television?" "You don't want to know. Trust me on this one." Vex'talon rubbed his temples with 2 of his tentacles. "In 6 centuries of first contact missions, no species has ever reacted to our ultimatums with such casual indifference." "Well, we're special that way," Jake said cheerfully. "We're the kind of species that looked at explosive devices and thought, hey, let's make bigger ones. We're the kind of species that invented fast food and somehow made it a cornerstone of our civilization. We're the kind of species that sent messages into space specifically to attract the attention of potentially hostile aliens, because we thought it would be interesting. You deliberately tried to attract alien attention? Oh yeah, we've been doing that for decades. Carl Sagan was really into it. Nice guy, probably would have liked you. Though he might have asked you to fill out forms too. Vex'talon put his head in his tentacles. This was going to be a very long day. Jake stood up and stretched, apparently oblivious to the fact that he was in the presence of a being capable of obliterating his entire civilization. You know what? I think you need to see more of human culture before we continue this conversation. Come on, let's take a field trip. A field trip? Vex'talon's translator seemed to be having trouble with the concept. Yeah, educational tour. You can't properly threaten a species without understanding what you're threatening, right? That's like Diplomacy 101. Before Vex'talon could protest, Jake was already heading for the door. We'll start with lunch. You hungry? 30 minutes later, Vex'talon found himself in what Jake called a McDonald's, staring at a menu that seemed to have been designed by someone having a fever dream about food. The establishment was filled with humans of various ages, all consuming what appeared to be processed meat products with the enthusiasm of people who had never heard of nutrition. This is your cultural center? Vex'talon asked, watching a small human child consume something called a happy meal while screaming at the top of his lungs. One of them, Jake said, ordering something called a Big Mac from a teenager who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the universe. McDonald's is a global institution. There are over 38,000 locations worldwide. You have 38,000 locations serving this? Food, Jake said proudly. Well, food-adjacent substances. The important thing is it's fast, cheap, and technically edible. Vex'talon watched in horrified fascination as Jake consumed his meal with apparent enjoyment. Your species has achieved interplanetary travel capabilities, and this is how you choose to nourish yourselves? We haven't achieved interplanetary travel, Jake corrected. We've barely managed to get to our own moon, and that was mostly just to prove we could do it better than the Russians. But your technology levels suggest. Oh, we're weird about technology, Jake said, taking another bite. We can build smartphones that are more powerful than the computers that got us to the moon, but we still can't figure out how to make printers work properly. Their next stop was what Jake called a monster truck rally, which appeared to be an event where humans had taken perfectly functional vehicles and modified them into mechanical monstrosities for the sole purpose of watching them crush smaller vehicles while very loud music played. This is your entertainment? Vex'talon shouted over the noise of engines and cheering crowds. One of our more refined cultural pursuits, Jake shouted back. You should see our reality TV shows. I thought you said reality television was an extinction-level threat. It is. Vex'talon watched in growing alarm as a vehicle the size of a small building drove over a row of smaller vehicles, crushing them completely while the crowd cheered. Your species destroys functional technology for recreational purposes. Oh, this is nothing, Jake said cheerfully. Wait until you see our military history. The final stop was a history museum, where Jake led Vex'talon through exhibit after exhibit of human warfare. The ambassador's horror grew with each display. This is from our Civil War, Jake explained, pointing to a cannon. We fought ourselves for 4 years over whether people should be allowed to own other people. 600,000 dead, but we figured it out eventually. You fought a war against yourselves? Oh, we do that a lot. Civil wars, revolutions, that sort of thing. This section here is from World War I, where we killed about 20 million people using poison gas and machine guns. And over here is World War II, where we killed about 70 million people and invented nuclear weapons. Vex'talon stared at a display showing the aftermath of atomic warfare. You developed weapons capable of destroying entire cities? 2 of them, actually. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then we felt so bad about it that we built about 70,000 more nuclear weapons, just in case. In case of what? In case we needed to feel bad about something else, I guess. Logic isn't really our strong suit. They paused in front of a display about the Cold War, where Jake explained how two superpowers had spent 50 years threatening to destroy all life on Earth over ideological differences, but had somehow never gotten around to actually doing it. So let me understand this correctly, Vex'talon said slowly. Your species has repeatedly brought itself to the brink of extinction, developed weapons capable of destroying your own planet, and fought wars against yourselves that killed millions of people. That's correct. And you're still here. Also correct. And you're not afraid of my threats because honestly, you're probably not the worst thing that's happened to us this century. We've survived pandemics, climate change, nuclear brinkmanship, and the invention of social media. At this point, getting conquered by aliens would at least be something new. Vex'talon looked around the museum, taking in the displays of human ingenuity applied to increasingly creative methods of destruction. Your species is insane? Yeah, we get that a lot, Jake said proudly. Come on, let's head back. I've got paperwork to finish. The Galactic Council's emergency session was called to order with considerably less pomp than usual. Council Prime Zephyr's crystalline form was flickering with what could only be described as anxiety, while the other council members shifted nervously in their respective atmospheric bubbles and environmental suits. Ambassador Vex'talon, Zephyr began, his voice carrying none of its usual authority. Please repeat your report for the full council. Vex'talon's tentacles had lost their purple luster and were now a sickly gray color. Council Prime, I regret to inform you that the human species has declined our offer of galactic citizenship. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Councillor Thiska clicked her mandibles rapidly. Declined? That's not possible. No species has ever declined. The humans are unlike any species we've encountered, Vex'talon continued. They appear to be simultaneously too primitive to understand our superiority and too dangerous to safely ignore. Explain, Zephyr commanded. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet, which they've nearly used multiple times by accident. They regularly engage in warfare against themselves for reasons that make no logical sense. Their primary forms of entertainment involve either watching other humans engage in physical combat or consuming what they call reality television, which appears to be a systematic method of destroying brain cells. Councillor Brix Nem's gaseous form rippled with confusion. Are they primitive or advanced? Both, Vex'talon said miserably. They have computers more powerful than our oldest data cores, but they use them primarily to share images of small furry animals and argue about whether water is wet. Water is wet, Councillor Thiska said automatically. The humans have a 3-hour debate about this on something called Twitter, Vex'talon replied. Every day. The council members exchanged worried glances. This was unprecedented. Perhaps, Zephyr suggested, we should consider a more forceful approach. A demonstration of our military capabilities. Council Prime, Vex'talon said quietly. The humans have a saying, hold my beer and watch this. It's what they say before doing something incredibly dangerous for no reason other than curiosity about what might happen. And when I mentioned our fleet's destructive capabilities, the human Jake Morrison asked if we'd ever tried using our weapons on a hurricane. The chamber fell silent. He wanted to know if we could stop a hurricane, Vex'talon continued. When I explained that our weapons were designed to destroy planets, not weather patterns, he suggested we might be thinking too small and offered to introduce me to someone from their military who thinks outside the box. What does that expression mean? Councillor Thiska asked. I believe it means they would find increasingly creative ways to weaponize our technology against us. At that moment, the council's secure communications array crackled to life. Every member of the council turned to stare at the device, which was supposed to be impossible for primitive species to access. Hello? Came a familiar voice. Is this thing on? Ambassador Vex'talon, you there? It was Jake Morrison. The council members stared at each other in growing panic. Zephyr activated the communication array with a trembling crystalline appendage. How did you access this frequency? Oh, hey there. Jake Morrison, Deputy Assistant to the Undersecretary of Interdepartmental Relations. I just wanted to follow up on our conversation earlier. Did you guys figure out that technical glitch with your ships? This is impossible, Zephyr whispered. This is a quantum encrypted channel using technology that won't be invented by your species for another 1,000 years. Yeah, about that, Jake's voice continued cheerfully. Our department took a look at your communication protocols. Pretty advanced stuff, but you're using a really old encryption standard. We stopped using that one back in the 90s. Anyway, I was calling to see if anyone wanted pizza. Pizza? Counselor Vex'talon's form rippled in confusion. It's food. Bread, cheese, tomato sauce, various toppings. We've got pepperoni, mushroom, Hawaiian, though I should warn you, the Hawaiian pizza thing is pretty controversial. Started a few wars, actually. The council members looked at each other in growing horror. Their most secure communications had been penetrated by a species that started wars over food toppings. Human Jake Morrison. Zephyr said carefully. How long have you been monitoring our communications? Oh, since about 10 minutes after Ambassador Vex'talon's ship showed up. Our military was pretty interested in your technology, so they had some people take a look. Nice work on the faster-than-light travel, by the way. We've been trying to figure that one out for years. You've been listening to our private council sessions? Well, yeah, I mean, you guys were talking about us, so we figured we should probably pay attention. Basic politeness, you know? Vex'talon put his head in his tentacles. Council Prime, I formally request reassignment to any other species in the galaxy. Request denied, Zephyr said grimly. We're all in this together now. Jake's voice came through the speakers again. So about that pizza. We're thinking of having it delivered to your ship. What do you guys eat anyway? 3 months later, the Galactic Council convened for what would later be remembered as the Great Reclassification. The formal agenda listed it as a routine review of first contact protocols, but everyone knew they were really there to figure out what to do about the human problem. The problem had gotten worse. Much worse. Current status report, Zephyr announced, his crystalline form now showing visible stress fractures. Ambassador Vex'talon consulted his notes with the weary expression of someone who had seen too much. The humans have established what they call an embassy on 17 different worlds. They claim it's for cultural exchange, but mostly they seem to be introducing other species to something called pizza delivery and social media. What's the current casualty count? Counselor Vex'talon asked. No deaths, Vex'talon replied, but the Regelians have started a civil war over whether pineapple belongs on pizza, and the Centaurians have split into 2 factions based on their preferred social media platforms. This is getting out of hand, Counselor Vex'talon rippled anxiously. They're disrupting thousands of years of galactic stability. It gets worse, Vex'talon continued. They've started something called reality television broadcasting. 3 star systems have already reported significant decreases in intellectual capacity among their populations. The communication array crackled to life again. By now, the Council had learned to expect these interruptions. Hey there, galactic buddies. Jake Morrison's voice filled the chamber with its characteristic cheerfulness. Just wanted to give you a heads up, we're planning a little event called First Contact Day to celebrate our new friendship. We're thinking of making it an annual thing. Parades, fireworks, maybe a monster truck rally. You guys are totally invited. Human Jake Morrison, Zephyr said in a defeated tone, we need to discuss your species' expansion into galactic affairs. Oh, that. Yeah, it's been pretty fun. Did you know the Zeta Reticulans have never seen a magic trick? I showed them how to pull a quarter from behind someone's ear, and they declared me a wizard. I'm thinking of starting a whole magic show circuit. You're disrupting galactic civilization, Counselor Vex'talon pointed out. Are we? I mean, everyone seems to be having a pretty good time. The Andromedans love our cooking shows. And the Vegan Coalition is really into our environmental documentaries. Though I should probably mention that the vegan coalition isn't actually vegan, that's just what they call themselves. Bit of a translation error there. Vex'talon looked around the council chamber, seeing his own defeat reflected in the faces of his colleagues. Human Jake Morrison, what do you want from us? Want? Nothing, really. We're just happy to make new friends. Oh, but I was wondering, do you guys have any good barbecue recipes? We're planning a cookout next weekend, and I figured alien cuisine might be interesting. We surrender, Zephyr said suddenly. The chamber fell silent. I'm sorry? Jake's voice came through the speakers. We surrender, Zephyr repeated. The Galactic Council formally surrenders to the human species. That's not really how this works, Jake said, sounding confused. We're not trying to conquer anybody. We just want to hang out and maybe share some pizza. We're reclassifying your species, Zephyr continued, ignoring the protests. It's effective immediately. Humans are classified as a Category X civilization. What's Category X? Jake asked. It's a new category we just invented, Vex'talon said tiredly. It means too dangerous to fight, too friendly to fear, too weird to understand. Aw, that's sweet. Can we put that on t-shirts? You'll probably put it on t-shirts regardless of what we say, Zephyr muttered. You know us so well already. And so it was that the Galactic Council learned the most important lesson in the history of interstellar diplomacy, that sometimes the most dangerous species in the galaxy is the one that doesn't know it's dangerous, doesn't want to be dangerous, and just wants to be friends. Jake Morrison became the unofficial human ambassador to the galaxy, a position he approached with the same casual competence he'd shown to interdepartmental relations. He never did learn to kneel, but he did learn to make a mean alien barbecue sauce. The galaxy was never quite the same, but honestly it was probably more fun that way.